All right, let's get into it. 1. Groom of the Stool. So picture this. You're living in medieval England, and the most prestigious job you could land involves literally wiping the king's butt. Yeah, I'm serious. The Groom of the Stool was basically the royal bathroom assistant, and before you cringe too hard, hear me out. This job was actually insanely lucrative. These guys helped the monarch with everything toilet-related. We're talking removing clothing, prepping the royal throne, and yes, handling the cleanup. But here's the kicker. They also had to examine what came out. I know, gross, but they were checking for health issues before doctors could run actual tests. Think of them as early medical diagnostics, except way more hands-on than anyone ever wanted. Now here's why people actually fought for this job. Private access to the king. While you're helping His Majesty do his business, you've got his undivided attention. No courtiers, no advisors, just you and the most powerful person in the country having a chat. This meant serious political influence. And the money? Absolutely wild. Take William Compton, who served Henry VIII. This dude pulled in around £2,000 per year through land grants and titles. To put that in perspective, that's what wealthy bishops and noblemen were earning. So yeah, dealing with royal waste literally paid like you were royalty yourself. 2nd, Gong Farmer. If you thought the last job was bad, buckle up. Gong Farmers, also called nightmen because they only worked at night, had possibly the worst job description in history, manually draining cesspits full of human waste. These guys would climb down into these disgusting pits with nothing but buckets and shovels, scooping out literal piles of poop that had been festering for months, sometimes years. And remember, this is before flashlights existed, so they're doing all this in complete darkness, hoping the moon gives them enough light to see where they're stepping. The dangers were no joke. These cesspits released toxic fumes that could knock you unconscious, and if you passed out while knee-deep in sewage, well, you can imagine how that story ends. The stone walls could also collapse and bury you alive in the worst possible way. But here's the thing. Because this job was so absolutely revolting and dangerous, it paid surprisingly well. During the Tudor period, Gong Farmers earned about 6 pence a day, which was considered really good money for working-class folks. The catch? You smelled so bad that you were only allowed to live in certain parts of the city, and most people avoided you like the plague, literally trading your social life for cash. 3rd, Resurrectionists. Ever heard of a job where you steal dead bodies for money? Meet the Resurrectionists, the grave robbers of the 1800s who supplied medical schools with fresh corpses for anatomical studies. Here's how it worked. Doctors needed bodies to practice on and teach their students, but legally, they could only use executed criminals. That supply was nowhere near enough, so they hired these resurrection men to, well, go shopping in graveyards. The weird part? It technically wasn't super illegal. The government publicly said grave robbing was wrong, but then kind of looked the other way when it happened. The one rule, don't steal anything valuable from the coffin. Take a necklace or even a coin, and suddenly you're looking at 5 years in prison for felony theft. These guys developed some creative strategies. The most common was digging down to the coffin's head, smashing it open, tying a rope around the corpse, and yanking it out. But some went wild, digging tunnels 15 feet long, approaching the grave from an angle, then pulling the body back through. Completely inefficient, but hey, points for creativity. The money was incredible. In the 1820s, you could get 7 to 10 pounds per body, when the average worker was making about 31 pounds per year. Selling just one corpse gave you 3 to 4 months worth of wages. Not a bad night's work if you could stomach it. 4. Tosher. London's sewers in the 1800s were dark, dangerous, and absolutely disgusting. They were also potentially profitable if you were brave or desperate enough to become a tosher. Toshers were sewer scavengers who waded through the underground tunnels looking for anything valuable that people had accidentally dropped or flushed away. Coins, jewelry, scrap metal, anything they could sell. Some sewers were at ground level, but others went 40 feet underground, making the smell situation absolutely unbearable. These guys worked in groups of 4, 3 newbies and 1 veteran who knew where the good spots were. Their strategy was basically just hard work. Walk around all day shoving your arms into suspicious piles of waste, hoping to find treasure. But wait, it gets weirder. According to local legend, Toshers had to worry about wild hogs living in the sewers that would actively attack them. Whether that's true or just an urban myth, every Tosher believed it and carried that fear with them into the tunnels. Despite all the nastiness and danger, Toshers could actually make decent money. On a good day, they'd find stuff worth about 6 shillings, which translates to roughly $50 in today's money. For people with no other options, that was enough to make crawling through sewage seem worth it. 5. Fullery worker. Ancient Rome had a unique approach to doing laundry, and it involved something you definitely have in your bathroom right now: urine. Fullery workers, or fullones, were the laundromat employees of ancient Rome. Their job was to clean and whiten clothes by literally stomping on them in giant vats. Sounds simple enough, right? Except those vats were filled with water and human urine. Romans discovered that the ammonia in urine was perfect for breaking down oils and dirt, making it an effective cleaning agent and bleach. So these workers would spend their days jumping up and down on dirty clothes in pea water. The Romans even collected urine in public urinals specifically for this industry. As common laborers, fullery workers earned between 1 and 2 denarii per day. While not spectacular money, it was steady work that kept food on the table. The Romans were practical like that. If it works, no matter how weird it seems. 6. Leech collector. Back when medicine was basically educated guessing, bloodletting was considered a cure-all treatment. Doctors believed draining blood could fix almost any ailment, and their tool of choice was the medicinal leech. This created huge demand for leeches, which is where leech collectors came in. But their collection method was, let's call it hands-on, or rather, legs-on. These collectors would wade into marshes and swamps and use their own bare legs as bait. They'd just stand there while leeches latched onto them and started feeding. Once the leeches were nice and full of blood, the collector would pull them off and toss them in a bucket for sale to doctors. You can imagine this wasn't great for their health. Losing blood regularly while standing in dirty swamp water is basically asking for problems. But the job paid around 1 to 2 shillings per pound of leeches collected, which could add up if you were willing to sacrifice your legs to the cause. 7th Plague Doctor. When the Black Death was ravaging Europe, someone had to treat the sick and dying. Enter the plague doctors, easily recognizable by their creepy bird-like masks stuffed with aromatic herbs. The masks weren't just for show. Doctors believed the herbs would protect them from miasma, the bad air they thought spread disease. Spoiler alert, it didn't work, which is why this job was insanely dangerous. Most plague doctors were either second-rate physicians looking for work or desperate volunteers willing to risk it all. Cities were so desperate for plague doctors that they threw money at anyone willing to take the job. In 1348, the city of Orvieto hired a plague doctor for 200 florins a year, 4 times what a normal physician would earn. That's like quadrupling your salary to work in a disaster zone. The job was basically a death sentence with a huge paycheck attached. You'd visit plague victims, try treatments that rarely worked, and hope you didn't catch it yourself. Some survived and made a fortune. Many didn't survive at all. 8. Sin Eater. Here's a job that's equal parts fascinating and tragic. Sin Eaters were social outcasts hired by families to literally absorb the sins of deceased loved ones during funerals. The ritual was simple but bizarre. They'd place bread and ale on the chest of the corpse, then the Sin Eater would consume it, supposedly taking on all the dead person's sins so they could enter heaven with a clean slate. Basically, rich people paying poor people to go to hell for them. The pay was terrible, just 4 to 6 pence per soul, plus whatever meal was used in the ritual. But for desperately poor people with no other options, It was something. The cruel irony? Sin eaters became complete social pariahs. Everyone believed they were full of sin, so nobody wanted to be around them. They were isolated, shunned, and often hunted by the church, which saw them as competition for the confession business. It's a job that perfectly captures how desperate poverty could make people, willing to be hated and avoided by everyone just to survive. So there you have it, 8 jobs from history that prove people will do absolutely anything if you pay them enough. Makes your current job look pretty good by comparison, right?